Back live, ladies and gentlemen. You know, when I talk about the government being corrupt, the government being out of control, I don't mean the average cop, the average fireman, the average tax assessor, the average bureaucrat who's just studying water samples. A lot of good people in government. But the structure of it, who runs it, how it operates. Here's an example. It has come out that a secret branch of the British government has been spying on all members of Parliament for decades and tapping their phones and tapping their parliamentary phones. Again, the military-industrial complex, the private banks, the arms manufacturers have taken over every Western government. They run us at their pleasure, and then they only have the illusion or simulated liberty, simulated free market, simulated capitalism, simulated voting. That's why they don't care about me being on the air. In fact, I've been told by some of them, when I've talked to globalists before, they just laugh and say, we don't care if the slaves know. We don't, these people don't want your help, Mr. Jones. I've talked to big corporate chieftains, you name it. They say, Alex, these people don't want your help. Look, you tell them and they don't want it. Of course it's all true. They See, that's why I was laughing earlier, was to show you how they're laughing at you. And look, you're always going to have boss hogs and good old boys and corruption. What I don't like is that they put poison in the water knowingly for eugenics to dumb down their competition, and they say it's to dumb down the middle class who might get in the way of their plan. Or the fact that they knowingly, by the 20s, had isolated cancer viruses and they started putting them in the vaccines. Or that they've sterilized women forcibly all over the planet. Or that our government paid China hundreds of billions of dollars in the aggregate over time to forcibly sterilize and have a one-child policy. I mean, that's hardcore. Now, I remember when I first got on air about 13 years ago, getting emails, first out of Australia. And it was a supposed cable company installer, and he got into one of the cable boxes, and it had a camera and microphone in it. And I got on air, and I said, that's a hoax. That story's not true. Turned out I was wrong. I mean, 13 years ago, the Federal Reserve is private. We need to get rid of it, and we need the Second Amendment. And I was kind of like a Ron Paul-style Republican, but still pretty mainline. But then over the years, I found out all this stuff was true. I remember in 1996 getting on the radio and saying, you guys are kooks that believe in black helicopters. They don't exist. And it's just something the media just throws out there to make us all look dumb. Let's talk about serious issues. Then they started attacking towns all over Texas. I went and witnessed it. I went and interviewed police chiefs who they tried to bribe, emergency managers like Thomas Sanchez in Kingsville when they came to him and said, it's PDD 25, we're gearing up for martial law. And then it was on the front page of the Statesman, remember? Army terrorizes South Texas, remember the headline? But then next to it, a big column saying conspiracy theorist Alex Jones doesn't like it. They admitted it was all happening, but then said, but still, you're a conspiracy theorist if you don't like it. And people said, well, then I'm all for it. Those helicopters don't exist, even when the paper says that they do. See, this is basic psychological warfare they're using on you. And I remember in 98, it was in the San Antonio Express News. They came into the police chief, the Delta Force. They had big bags of cash. They tried to buy off the mayor, everybody else. They were able to buy off a bunch of people with bags of cash. The police chief said this is illegal. He was former Army intelligence himself, good patriotic guy, Ali Philippus. I called him up, said I'd like to interview the chief for my local show on Channel 10 and for the radio. I got in the car, drove down, went down to the police station, went upstairs, talked to him, and he said, yeah, this is for martial law, and I'm not going to be part of it. That interview's available. It's all over the web for free. It's in my film, Police State 2000. Just a police chief. Then we went to Alice, Texas, interviewed a police chief who admitted foreign troops were with them, but he was all for it. He said the foreign troops could know about their secret plan, but the citizens couldn't. But the emergency manager at Kingsville said no. And then they said, oh, it's okay, sir. We've seen your file. You were in intelligence in Vietnam, Mr. Sanchez. We'll let you see the plan. And it was PDD 25, Clinton's gun confiscation op. It was a training op. They do it to condition each city before they carry out the op in the future, if it's ever needed. That way, when they actually attack your cities and take over your city halls where need be, you would have already seen it happen before in drills, and everyone is acclimated to it. Now it's in PDD 51. Bush has reauthorized. John Ward Defense Authorization Act openly says for taking over the states and fighting the American people in insurrection and rebellion. It's not our military. It's not our government anymore. Does that mean our young men and women in uniform didn't join for the right reasons? Does it not mean they're not brave? Does it not mean no, they're in a bad system. Just like German soldiers, by and large, weren't bad, but they were in a bad system. Most of them were compartmentalized. Maybe 4 or 5% of the German military was involved in death camps. I used to think that it was the Germans were lying at the end of World War II when General Eisenhower made the German, and I've seen the film of this, made Germans haul the dead out of the camps and bury them. You see everybody throwing up. They'd have the townspeople out. And the Germans were saying, we didn't know. Well, now I've read a lot of documents, read a lot of history books. They really didn't know. They're just like the average American. You don't know. You don't want to know. You don't want to believe. You don't want to know what's happening. I'll tell you who did know. Arnold Schwarzenegger's daddy was running operations, arresting people in an entire sector. He knew he was part of it. And that pig gets up on TV and always wears that Nazi belt buckle. I'm so sick of Schwarzenegger. But that's only in the land of the cowards, home of the slaves, would you have a Nazi who said he admires Hitler, the son of a top Nazi running the seventh largest economy in the world. But the Pentagon's paying compliance, mind control weapons. That's another mainstream article we're going to be going over. But you know what? Let me just go ahead and, before we go to break, and come back and take your calls, let me just go ahead and get into the cable boxes first. Then we'll take calls, and then I'm going to get into the DNA database. Your child is in a Homeland Security criminal database. Even if your child is 10 years old and Homeland Security didn't exist then, they have now gone back and gotten all the blood samples the feds took illegally at your child when your child was born, and the hospital compliantly and cowardly went along with, and that's now in the federal DNA database. But I thought I'd get into this first. About a year and a half, actually about 2 years ago now, maybe longer. You can go pull up the Prison Planet article about it. Google put out a press release and said, we've been testing this for years, but now we're going ahead with it. Most computers have built-in microphones and cameras, and you use it for video conferencing, but it's two-way. And we're just going to have a piece of software preloaded when you use us, or we're working on deals. And they said Yahoo has their own system and Microsoft has their own system, but our system's better. Now Microsoft owns Yahoo, but back then they didn't. And so they even talk about everybody else has the same system, but ours is a little bit better. And they said that computers with keywords are recording everything going on in your house with the microphone and the video camera, either or both. And it said that if your dog is barking, they know to flash and to even sell your name and send you junk mail for the dog barking, for foods or toys or products for pets. They even know what TV show you're watching in the background, and then they know how to tailor ads. You wonder why the TV show you like, those ads pop up on Google when you're on the computer. How do they know that? A lot of times it's not just cookies. The computer is listening to you, and it is, with the same NSA keyword technology, it's typing out everything you say, and then the whole of that data is then analyzed and put into your file. And they brag about this. They have an entire psychological algorithm, everything about you, what your true habits are, what you're really into, not just what you visit and what you do online, but what happens in your home. And then they said, but don't worry, humans aren't actually listening. The computers are just creating files on you, and then humans look at that. Imagine if somebody came to your door and knocked on it and said, I'll pay you $1,000 a month to put cameras all over your house and to listen to you, and you'd say no, unless you were some exhibitionist. And don't they make tens of thousands a month, those women? You'd say, get off my porch, pervert. But Google announces it, and you go, oh, I don't want to admit I'm in a tyranny. I'm going to make an instant yuppie crime stop double-think motion from Orwellville, and I'm going to decide just to mentally ignore that. That's what cowards do. They make minute-to-minute cowardly decisions.
I can see clearly.